When most people think of pirates,
Whoa! What the heck? What douchebag allowed her to get in front of a camera like that? She looks like a hooker who just crawled out of bed. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we have episode 3 of Ordinary Women, and we're not going to spend a ton of time breaking down the overall costs. I'll just show them here. The animation is the best by far. It looks like they went all out and used an actual person for Ching Shih's animation. It's like, wow. I'm actually kind of impressed. There's just something weird about the audio though. Anita's audio sounds kind of tin canny. It's really inferior to the 2 previous episodes.
when most people think of pirates, they imagine hulking, fearsome men with names like Blackbeard or Long John Silver. Years before her critics dubbed her one of the most dangerous people in America, a young woman named Emma Goldman found herself at a dance. While there are many flamboyant but dubious accounts invented by Western writers of a gorgeous goddess, if you've ever fallen in love with a novel, you know the moment. You look at the clock, it's 1 in the morning, and you still can't put the book down.
The music sounds pretty good, but it sounds like it was poorly recorded. I was listening to it intently at the end, and it seems like the drums flooded out during recording, but instead of being properly adjusted, it was de-amplified way too much. It could have sounded awesome, but it actually sounds really muffled instead. Facts and information-wise, this episode seems to have more truth than error. I even went to a library, a college library that's almost an hour away from my house, to track down one of the most commonly cited books that talks about Jing Qi and Cheng Pao. It is so rare that almost nobody sells it except for a couple people who think they'll actually make $1,000 off of it online. Its text isn't even searchable on Google Books, let alone Amazon's Search Inside feature. I expected that there would be information in this 30-year-old book that might belie the supposed awesomeness of Jing Qi, because as I've discovered with Ordinary Women so far, you do not trust what Anita or Laura say on their word. I expected to find something incriminating. What I found instead was more verification of 90% of the things Anita claims. I know what you're thinking. Okay, so what about the remaining 10%? Don't worry, there's plenty to go over.
We don't know much about her early life, except that at one point she worked at a brothel in Canton.
Yep, Jing Qi was a hooker. I think we know now why Anita dressed the way she did.
You are a smelly pirate hooker.
We don't know exactly what Jing looked like, although some historians have assumed she caught the eye of her pirate husband through good looks rather than her considerable intelligence.
That's a very reasonable assumption, Anita. Jing Qi worked at a brothel, okay? Presumably she wasn't the ugliest chick who ever lived.
Their acceptance of a woman as their commander remains a remarkable testament to both her political skill and the respect she must have earned from the crew.
Yes, exactly. That is the one thing about Jing Qi that makes her success as a pirate so intriguing. I've mulled this over in my head. Why would a whole bunch of bloodthirsty pirates allow a woman, a former hooker no less, be their leader? I don't see murdering, thieving, human trafficking pirates as above assassinating someone they didn't want to be their leader. Somewhere along the way, Jing Qi earned enough respect from her husband's subordinates to fill his role to their satisfaction. Perhaps Jing Qi really is an exception to the rule. She may really have been a genius at piracy. Of course, I would obviously credit her genius to her having learned a great deal from her husband since he was the best pirate in the fleet, but she seems to have been a great student.
She soon appointed her adopted son, Jing Pao, as the commander of her most powerful fleet and eventually married him.
Ah, so Jing Qi was a total pervert too. I wonder how that figured into the process of choosing Anita's outfit. Let me see. How can we make you look like a hooker who became a pirate and then married her adopted son? Oh, there we go.
You are a smelly pirate hooker.
Although she rejected many traditional ideas about what women could and couldn't do, other rules were extremely important.
I like how she says Jing Qi rejected traditional ideas of what women could and couldn't do. Jing Qi was a murderer, a thieving, murdering, human trafficking former hooker pirate who married her own stepson. What should we see Jeffrey Dahmer as a defiant man of history for rejecting traditional ideas of what men could and couldn't do, even though he was a murdering, cannibalistic psychopath?
With a fearsome floating army at her back, Jing Qi negotiated a very good deal. Not only were she and any other pirates who surrendered completely pardoned by the government for their many, many crimes.
Nope, not true. Page 144 of Pirates of the South China Coast documents that 350 of Jing Qi's pirates were excluded from the amnesty and were either temporarily banished, permanently exiled, or executed.
When she finally died in 1884 at 60 years old,
She died in 1844, not 1884. Remember how Anita said Ching Shih married her first husband in 1801?
in 1801, Jing Qi married a pirate commander named Jing Yi.
If she died in 1884, then that means Jing Qi lived for another 83 years, which would make it impossible for her to die at 60 years of age. It's kind of funny that even in the transcript for this episode on Feminist Frequency's website, they correctly list Jing Qi's death at 1844, but Anita said 1884. Looks like a certain somebody who wrote the script and was present on the day of filming the series wasn't paying very close attention so as to correct this little mistake. Not that this proves any malicious or sinister intentions on their part, just sloppiness. I can forgive Anita for making a slip up like this. She got her lines wrong, no big deal. But when Laura Hudson, the writer who wrote down the correct date, is there and ought to be relied upon for catching mistakes like this, that's a big deal. Why is she even there if she's not going to provide quality control? There is some speculation as to exactly how old Jing Qi was when she died. The reason Anita said she died at 60 is because while basically all sources on Jing Qi say she died in 1844, many of them put Jing Qi's birth in the year 1775 or 1785. If the latter is correct, then she did die at 59 or 60 years of age. Of course, if she was born in 1775, then that means, as most sources say, she died at 69 years of age. Yep, a former hooker dying at age 69. I thought of writing this section of my script without mentioning that, but I just couldn't resist it. Anyway, why did Laura Hudson go with Jing Qi dying at 60 instead of 69? I don't know, but that's not really important. If this is an error, it's not a big one.
When she finally died in 1884 at 60 years old, she had transformed herself from a relatively powerless young woman into both the most powerful female pirate in history.
Okay, let's not get carried away here. Saying she transformed herself sounds so heroic and inspiring, but some accounts of Jing Qi's entry into piracy say she was captured or kidnapped into it. Keep in mind, we do not know that this is how it happened. Many, if not most, sources I could find don't even comment on whether Jing Qi consensually entered into piracy or not. However, it's worth pointing out that Laura Hudson and Anita Sarkeesian are definitively saying that Jing Qi transformed herself, when the little information we do have suggests that her transformation from prostitute to pirate may have actually been against her will. Aside from a couple innocent mistakes and a little presumption, again, there's not too much to object to in terms of the bare facts. That is, in this episode alone. Let's not forget what Anita said about Jing Qi in March, which was at the same time or shortly after she filmed this Ordinary Women series.
Each of them was surrounded by cultural messages that said women had to be small, quiet, and submissive in order to be good.
I see no evidence of that. None. The same book I found that backs up most of what Anita said in the actual Ching Shih episode talks about female pirates being a normal thing, even saying some of them fought in battle. And this is not the only book that makes this point. There is no reason to believe that Jing Qi was taught that if she wanted to be good, she had to be calm, quiet, or submissive.
But they spoke up for themselves, often at the cost of harassment, slander, racism, and even death threats.
Yeah, no kidding. She was a pirate. Remember? A thieving, murdering, human trafficking pirate. Of course she was the object of harassment and slander and death threats. So what? Who cares about harassment? She was facing people who were literally attempting to kill her, and she actually deserved it. This wasn't oppression of a woman for being a woman, this was oppression of a criminal.
In a world that was designed to silence and diminish them,
Who was trying to silence and diminish her? Jing Qi lived in a world of mostly male pirates, and they didn't try to silence and diminish her. What world is Anita talking about?
in a world that was designed to silence and diminish them, they had to be more than just talented. They had to be defiant.
Nope, no evidence for that either. In fact, as we just saw, not only did the pirates think she was the one person fit to be their leader, she might have been kidnapped into piracy. One might suggest that she needed to be defiant in order to work alongside her husband, but as we just saw, women working alongside their husbands was normal, so that doesn't work either. And as far as this whole being talented and needing to be defiant thing goes, Jing Zhi started off as a hooker. In fact, if she did die at 69, then that means she was in her her mid-20s before she married that pirate captain. Left to her own devices, she was like a lot of women, using her sexuality to get by. I don't see her being this super smart, talented, defiant person on her own. I accept that she received great training from the pirate captain she married. Without marrying him, though, she almost certainly would have lived and died a hooker, or some other lowly pirate woman like so many others. One might say I'm trying too hard to find a way to undermine Jing Qi's success, but it's more like I'm illustrating a distinction between men and women, and how men tend to achieve great things through their own efforts, whilst women usually only follow suit after their husband or some other man or men in general make it easier for them. After talking about how extensively involved women pirates were in all aspects of life at sea, the Pirates of the South China Coast book even makes this point for me. Moreover, by the 18th century, the precedent for women as leaders of both religious sects and anti-dynastic rebellion had been firmly established, and Romantic literature boasted an entire genre of women warriors whose heroines were known throughout China. Finally, Zhang Aisao's ascent was very much in keeping with the tradition of Chinese women rising to power through marriage. Marrying well and then assuming the mantle of power on the death of the husband was the most expedient avenue of female mobility in nearly every social circle in China. The practice of widows coming into power prevailed within the bandit and secret society groups of the South as well. We may marvel at the ingenuity of Ching Shih today, but nobody acknowledges that this ingenious woman became the leader of the fleet on the back of her husband's previous success. Not to mention he had developed such an incredible pirate in Chang Pao, the one who created her code of conduct. I have no reason to believe that without these two men, she would have eventually transformed herself into this talented, defiant woman of history on her own. However, let's assume for a moment that all those considerations don't matter. Let's assume Ching Shih really did have it within herself to accomplish what she did, and she doesn't owe her success to the men in her life. Why? Because I've held off commenting on this amazing admission Anita Sarkeesian made in the actual Jing Zhi episode.
And of course, like so many male leaders, conquerors, and generals throughout history, her prosperity and success came at the cost of innocent lives. Her remarkable story is a reminder that regardless of the limitations placed on them, women can be anything that men can be. Brilliant and brutal, courageous and cruel, powerful and dreadful.
Oh, really? You really believe that, Anita Sarkeesian? I don't know. I can't tell. If I remember correctly, it was you that said,
"These devaluing tactics work to shore up the status quo, limiting the opportunities for women to gain entry to these spaces and actively maintaining male dominance, making it impossible to reach true gender equity."
Were you lying then, or are you lying now?
Regardless of the limitations placed on them, women can be anything that men can be.
The constant undermining and microaggressions, as well as straight-up harassment, pressure many women to abandon their professional field altogether. These devaluing tactics work to shore up the status quo, limiting the opportunities for women to gain entry to these spaces and actively maintaining male dominance, making it impossible to reach true gender equity.
This is why I never take anything Anita says for granted. You can't trust her with anything. Oh, the harassment and microaggressions limit women's ability to gain entry into a male-dominated field, and that makes it impossible to achieve true gender equity, huh? I guess someone forgot to tell Jing Qi, that woman who made her living as a hooker. She was at the bottom of the barrel, and then, as you say, transformed herself from a relatively helpless young woman into the greatest female pirate in history. How did she do that? I thought male dominance made it impossible to achieve true gender equity. I guess all the history about Jing Qi making it to the top of the food chain in a fleet of mostly male pirates is all just a bunch of fairy tales then. It's that, or Anita Sarkeesian is full of crap. What an amazing admission for her to make. It's like every interview or lecture she ever gave where she whines about all the bad things people say about her don't matter anymore. Who gives a crap about your rape and death threats, Anita Sarkeesian? Jing Zhi did pretty well for herself, so why don't you just get over it? The final thing I'll comment on is the production quality. This episode was so well made. I mean, yes, there was poor audio for Anita's voice, she had this stupid outfit, and the music was kind of muffled, but it sounded pretty good otherwise, and the animation was great. It begs the question, why then did they do such a cheap job in episode 1, and only a somewhat less cheap job in episode 2, when 29 grand could buy them this? This completely proves the point I've been making, that these episodes cost way too much money to make. They had the exact same amount of money budgeted for each one. Where did all that money go then, Anita Sarkeesian? You're telling me that you could hire a model, pay for her costumes, her hairstylists, help her learn her poses and choreography, and all that along with all the other expenses for this episode for $29,000, but that same amount of money could only buy you crap like this in the beginning? That's ridiculous. So yeah, there is far more truth than error in episode 3 of Ordinary Women, but as I've discovered so many times now, you scrutinize Anita Sarkeesian and she always comes up wanting. Always, no matter what. And that's what I have to say about episode 3 of Ordinary Women. Thanks for watching. I am Prince Asbel. We only have 2 more of these Ordinary Women episodes to go, and the next one is Ida B. Wells. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I will see you again on the Prince Asbel channel.